Good morning, everyone, and welcome to UnCon 3. It's all about data, stupid. So, yeah, a bit of a contentious subject or contentious title, but welcome, everyone, and a massive thanks for turning up. We've got more and more folk just joining us, as we can see on the screen. So, looking forward to a fantastic day. We will thank the sponsors one by one as we go along, but what I wanted to do first was give a feel for the context and the background for today's and tomorrow's event and sessions. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers. Some names I'm going to probably mess up as I pronounce them, but this is real, this is live, and if we don't make one or two mistakes, then, you know, we're not human. So, a little bit about DTL Creative and myself and the Blue Banana. I've been in housing for quite a while now, as have everyone that works for DTL Creative. Our mission at the moment is to stir things up a bit and to be unconventional. That's becoming quite obvious as we progress in all the activities we're doing. To come to the UnCons for a second, when we first did it way back in June, I think, was quite a revelation, this unconventional convention. We were struggling with COVID and still are. Who thought we would still be doing that? Well, it's getting pretty bad again. So best of luck to everyone on that front. But the UnCon is there to challenge, to reach out, to get people talking, to ask the questions that are perhaps difficult in other forums, other streams, other medias, other channels. So let's get talking today. That's the main thing. Let's get mixing, let's get mingling, let's get talking. And already I've been in early talking to people across the platform, so that's fantastic. What I wanted to do was also give a bit of background to why UnCon 3, it's all about data, stupid. We don't mean that in a kind of nasty way. We obviously mean that we want to try and get the message across to as bigger an audience as we can, because still some people, leaders, politicians, councillors, boards, staff do not get the importance of data. I think probably most folk in this room do, so let's work on how we can get that message out there. What I wanted to do was just have a quick chat about the white paper. It's on everyone's lips at the moment on social media, but also just generally on the chats we've been having. What do I think of it? It's kind of what we expected to see. There's nothing new or revealing there. But I did a search on the Word document, and as far as I can see, there's one word that appears only once, which was frustrating because I wanted to see it more, and that's technology. It appears once only, I think, in that document that I could do on PDF. That's disappointing to me and to, I think, most of the folk in the room, because when you look at the 6 streams of what they want to tackle, technology applies to all of them in a huge way and will continue, whether it's IoT, whether it's housing systems, whether it's mobile technology, or how we look after our tenants and how our staff become more efficient. So we are going to talk about that today. I know James Massey is coming up soon. We'll be talking a little bit about that, and I imagine maybe it'll come up in the chat and a few other areas today. So what I wanted to do was run through a little bit more about data and how it impacts our lives and our tenants' lives. Data, to me, is something that's so important that it could be the single most valuable asset in an organisation. Forget social housing for a second, but in our sector, we do not respect data. We do not respect it nearly enough. And I get really, really frustrated by the many management teams I work with, the many boards, the many members of day-to-day housing staff that do not get the importance of data. They get the importance of information, but do not understand that that information perhaps comes from data, and it's badly managed, and we're going to try and do something about it. So everything touches data, and data touches everything. And the end results and what the white paper is talking about is to get the best possible services, to get the safest possible tenants, the safest possible properties, and the safest possible delivery of services across everything we do in social housing data's at the core of it. So that's why we called it It's All About Data Stupid. But we're slow in as a sector, and I want to talk about that just very briefly. We're slow in adopting technology or adapting to technology. So let's keep going and driving. I am so pleased to see so many people today. And again, tomorrow, hopefully, we'll see the numbers the same. And we have, I think, about 150 registrations as we speak. And the people are pouring in. So this is fantastic. Let's talk about data and let's keep it real. About the day, there is a running order. You will see, if you look towards the top right of the screen, you will see running orders. But the main thing to do is just to keep your eyes peeled, to talk to people and look out for the announcements. There's a team behind the scenes that are announcing things, some of them automatic, some of them on the cuff, some of them right now, as you can see, there's some people chatting away, probably slagging me off in my Scottish accent on the speech. So keep an eye on that. I try to, and then there's certain people I try to ignore. Obviously, I don't ignore everyone. So good morning to you, Mike Bradley. Good morning, Gemma. Everyone's saying good morning and being very polite. So the running order, the flow and how we use Remo. First up today is, I'm just going to cover this as we go along. James Massey from MRI has got the keynote, the introduction to the event. I'm just giving the intro as far as DTL are concerned, the purpose, a bit of background, and why we're doing this, and some of the rules and some of the unrules, but let's say it because we want it to be free. One of the things that I think you'll find very useful to know is just a bit of a guide. At the bottom of your screen, you will see the bar that is very key for you being able to be seen or to be heard. So it's very obvious when you see cam on, mic on. Right now, if you're a presenter, you just present and present off, and it's as simple as that. I think the best thing to do today is to just go around the room in between the sessions. During the sessions, just sit down, relax, get your coffee, and watch, and it will automatically present to you. First up, as I said, is James Massey from MRI. Use the chat on the right hand side. Now the chat panel on the right hand side is interesting because it's got 3 sections to it. The first section is chat alone, where everyone is currently saying Dave doing his usual diplomatic job. Ha ha ha. Why? What have I said to upset somebody? Let me know. I do usually upset somebody within the first 4 seconds, but that's been hopefully not too bad today. So you've got chat, you've got participants where you can look up people. I'm clicking on that right now. I can see the whole 150 people there. You can click on somebody and you'll see the obvious things you can do. You can hunt them down, or you can find information. Please, if you get a second, can you do more than just your first name? It's a bit of it's kind of awkward for everyone else if you just say you're Dave. Although there's probably more than one Dave here today, there might not be. Or somebody would say there's only one Dave Loudon. I doubt that. Actually, there's a Dave Loudon that lives in Arkansas and he's a garage owner. If you ever do that Google yourself thing, it's good fun. What I would do is then look at the Q&A. When we're doing sessions, at the end of James's session and during it, I might jump in and ask things. But at the end of every session, I will come up and facilitate the questions and answers. And we will record that like we record every session of the day and tomorrow. There will be videos are made available online for that. So Q&As are done and they get ranked in order. We will flag them up and down. So don't be upset if you ask a question but haven't noticed perhaps somebody else has asked that question. We will demote that question. But we'll also promote questions that we feel are more relevant to the subject matter and try and get through all of them. That's usually quite a difficult part to manage, but if you bear with us, we will try and get through as many questions. Sometimes we get inundated with the questions like we did in the last 2 UnCons. So hopefully, yeah, I did James Massey, I did Google myself, and I'm going to Google you, James Massey, in a minute and see what other embarrassing James Masseys there are in the world. As Gabby said, who doesn't Google themselves? Hands up, everyone. Let's see who. Let's have a laugh here on the UnCon style. Let's go into chat and hands up, or just say yes or no if you've Googled yourself. And what you don't have to tell us what you found in case your actually alter ego is a porn star. Or indeed you're a porn star. There you go, Stu. I've upset everyone else already. 100% says Millie. Yes, Tim would. No, but might do it. Ryan, you have definitely done yourself. Of course, says Mark Duffo. Yep, it's mostly yeses. There's only one boy golden like it. Defo from Chris. This is hilarious. Let's just do this all day. Not often, but occasionally. Not often, but occasionally from John. I love that. Yep, Stu's done it. 41 minutes in and we're on to porn stars. Welcome to UnCon, to Simon Ray. That's us, UnCon. Porn stars galore. Oh, that was wrong. Right, okay, so other news. I want you to tweet, LinkedIn, Facebook if you want to, the UnCon. Now, there was a message earlier just to pick up on Stu when he did tweet the UnCon. It is hashtag the UnCon, but not with the exclamation mark after it. Just hashtag the UnCon, please. Please do that during the day. It helps us all get the message across. It helps us promote what we're trying to do in the sector, and it's a good laugh as well. But do not for Tim Roebuck has just done David Loudon. Oh, that's brilliant. Love it. I'm going to run out of time in a second before James Massey's here. But listen, please tweet away. Please use the hashtags. It's all of our lives these days is around social media. Well, I try not to do as much as some. But the UnCon, hashtag the UnCon. Please tweet it away and put it on LinkedIn. We are also, you might have seen for all the participants, an email last night and again perhaps this morning or just this morning. I've lost track of this one, but we are giving away in a prize draw a massive Christmas hamper. Try and bring a bit of cheer into the world at the moment. For those who, all you have to do is fill in a questionnaire. It helps us get things better and better as we go along, and it helps us give feedback. And we're also looking for sound bites. Listen, it's to promote this and to promote us as consultants as well. We're not going to lie. We want to get out there and be seen and heard. So let's do that. Let's get everyone filling that in as well. Not much more to it now. I think you'll be glad to hear any more messages coming in from James Massey searches being blocked by my web filter. Says Rich Harvey. That's no shock, says James. And James is joining me now on the stage. And here he is, the man himself, James Massey, with his, he swears he has not had a haircut.
I haven't got a haircut.
I think he has.
I haven't got a haircut. I promise you.
You've got your wet look wax on.
I've got wet look gel in there, and I've also put some aftershave on. I suggest that putting aftershave on as I'm on the
that's a good idea.
With the dog is probably not the best thing I've ever done, Dave. But you know,
well, you smell great. You smell great, James. I can smell you
next year's where we can have smell-o-vision. That'll be quite cool. So
we're working on it. In fact, the first housing management system out there that has smelly vision could be the one to go for.
Good.
Folks, enjoy James Massey. I'm going to jump in. I am told around slide 8. James, over to you, buddy.
Great stuff. No, thanks, David, and morning, everyone. So I Googled what the role of a keynote speaker is to do. So it says it's literally to set the keynote for the conference or event, and they're responsible for establishing the basic tone and tenor of the gathering that resonates through the event. So hopefully that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to make sure that my slide deck appears. We have tried this several times this morning, and it has worked perfectly well. So the man, the legend that is James Massey. Thank you very much, Mr. Davidson. So I'm James Massey. I'm the strategy director of MRI Software. I've been around for 24 years now in social housing and local authority. A lot of time spent in Capita, as people will probably know me for in the past, and then more lately the COO of Castleton for the last 4 years and 11 months. In fact, it's my 5-year anniversary next week. So had MRI not have bought Castleton, I would have had an extra day's annual leave for free. Unfortunately, they don't do that. So my presentation is all around data and digital, and the question, of course, is what's one without the other? So hands up if you think he's not wearing trousers. I promise you I am wearing trousers, Dave. And we'll see if I get up in a bit to prove that point. So MRI social housing, there's a few slides on us first as an organisation. Of course, I think Dave's agenda item said that we burst onto the scene or exploded onto the scene earlier this year with the acquisitions of our constituent parts. People probably know this already, but it's worth me just covering it off. So, of course, They started off actually in social housing some years ago with the acquisition of RAM, Real Asset Management, and also the Cube service charges solution. That's of course been fairly well used across the sector. Then this year they went on a big buying spree with the acquisition of Orchard first, followed by the Castleton business, and then through the Housing Partners business later on this year. So it's been an interesting journey. They are obviously an American organization, so there's some quite interesting things that they do. They have Pride weeks where they where kind of people get involved socially online, and they do like baking lessons and all sorts of very, very interesting things. Again, unconventional. Again, it ties into the theme of what Dave was talking about there, but it's again a very, very, very different experience. But the key thing is, they want to make a difference in this sector. Again, some of the things are going to come on to as we go through the slides deck should sort of cover that off there. Of course, they want to drive innovation to the sector, as we all do. And again, all of the providers and partners on this call, of course, all want to drive their innovation. We feel that there's a good, strong cultural alignment to what MRI are about as people. They're big into their people, they're big into their customers, they're big into long-term partnerships. But also the corporate view is, having everything open and connected. So again, I think that's something that we'll kind of come to later on. And again, they of course want to be a trusted technology partner of choice across the social housing sector. The map is my fine handiwork. I did that through something called Batch Geo. I thought it looked quite pretty, but it just kind of gives a view there in terms of our UK and Republic of Ireland social housing presence. So obviously, literally from as far away to the top of the United Kingdom to the very, very bottom of the United Kingdom, down to Guernsey, where there's a customer down there. Of course, there's a vast amount of overlap on that map, so I'm not sure what goes on kind of in this little belt at the very bottom, quite up at the top, it's sort of between Dave's fair country up at the top there, but there's a bit of a gap up there maybe to look at. But again, it sort of shows our depth and breadth of organisations across the country. Also, it doesn't obviously cover in here the Australia business that we have. So, we've got sort of 50 social housing providers in Australia and around 2,500 public housing providers in America. And the reason for saying that is because, we want to work with organisations, we want to work with customers. And again, as we go through the conversation, you'll see some of the ideas that we kind of bring in from our friends and colleagues over the water, either down to Australia or over to America. So, good presence in the United Kingdom, obviously, and a great presence, of course, in the Republic of Ireland as well. So what do MRI want to be known for? They're obviously new. They've got some great people in the organisation. They really want to be known, though, for the right reasons. Yes, and of course, there are, as with everything, of course, there's issues that we need to deal with, and there's operational things we need to deal with. But to a strategic level, they want to be known for putting tenants first at the front of what they do. It's so important that everything that we do, we put the tenants at the forefront of it. And again, that would apply to us or for anybody at all across the sector. They are the ultimate. Mr. Loudon's appeared. Have I done something wrong, Dave?
No, not at all. I'm just getting ready for slide 8.
I did panic then a little bit. I thought, I've done something wrong here.
No, just ignore me.
That's fine. I can ignore it. So, putting tenants first, I think, is key. We talk about our clients' customers, and we talk about, the ultimate end consumer of these solutions that we do. And again, that we all do. This isn't just an MRI, but this is about what we all do. So we always want to put what the tenants want to ultimately consume at the very, very end of that. So, let's consider some of those things. Think about a good user experience, and again, of course, we want to create a good multi-platform, a good multi-engaged platform, that all stakeholders can interact with, be that tenants, be that applicants, be that, whatever that sort of stakeholder is across that organization. But again, we want to create a great user experience, and critically something that people want to come back to use over and over and over again. That I guess is the key thing. And if you look at something like the Housing Partners product in Home Swapper, which I think has got just over 1 million users registered on that particular platform, it's a phenomenally well used solution across the sector. One MRI, and we're of course very, very, very very, very, thank you, Robert. That's I'll come to that in a second, Robert, on your little chat there. Something that we're very, very, very proud to own. And again, we were actually on a conversation yesterday around, how important Home Swapper is as a provision to this sector, and again, how we must kind of make sure we nurture that across the sector. It's interesting. It's the only business to consumer solution that we have in this space. So if you're not familiar with that, of course, we have lots and lots of landlords, and a lot are on this call, who use Home Swapper, who buy it through us, but also there's a number of people who don't have it, but their tenants still pay for it, and they pay us directly for that. So again, it's a difference in terms of what the difference is. I think as Robert's put there in the chat, and thank you, Robert, for flagging that there. I think putting tenants first. I made a note here what Dave said in his speech there around the best and safest that the sector can be. And I think for us as technology professionals across the board, regardless of who we work for, I think it's so important that we all kind of aim and endeavour to do that, to deliver technology that can support what our ultimate clients, customers want to be able to get from it. So, and I'll cover some bits on the white paper in a little while. So, we need to focus on the things that matter. I think it's so important that we focus on things that matter. We look at, what the sector demands are. We want to work with people. It's so important that we don't just kind of go, oh, well, we'll write this and we'll disappear off behind a dark curtain and come out in 6 months' time and go, ta-da, there's some software. You guys go, oh, that's awful. He's got the wrong end of the stick. Nobody wants to buy that. You've just created a load of shelfware there that nobody wants to be able to take. So I think for us, it's so important that we focus on the things that matter to organizations. We've got to get the operational things right. We've got to get all those things done correctly. I couldn't agree more. But actually, what should we focus on? So Dave, obviously it's over to you now to ask me, or ask the audience base there around some questions. And the question, of course, is what matters to you guys? That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, and folks, what I've done here is for the first attempt today, we have put a question in the Q&A for James. What we wanted to ask as well, and as independents, we wanted to ask everyone listening, what matters to you with regards to technology and social housing? So we can all talk about this, but please start filling in your answers if you can to help James and I and everyone in this conference to understand what it is that matters to you. So go to the chat, go to the Q&A, and you will start to see, hopefully some answers come through in that in a second. This is where we realise everyone's fallen asleep, James.
I do hope people haven't fallen asleep, Dave. It's not my normal way. People generally don't knock off in my presentations. So what's that there?
Let's see.
I'm just reading what Stuart says there. I've just seen Richard Harvey's comment that said there was no drum roll for appearance. So yeah, that's a shame, Dave. That's the thing for next year you should do. So Robert says that aligning digital capabilities to business outcomes and benefits. Yeah. I think if we look at channel shift, a phrase that I said to myself last night, I wasn't going to use the word channel shift, but I will use that phrase now, which kind of goes against what I wanted to do, but never mind. For me, I think we've done that. I think we've done digital version 1.0. We've done all those various things that we can do. I think for me, when I come to later on the slides, Robert, I've got something around digital transformation 2.0. And again, the bringing in of those alternative technologies or those additional technologies. What I don't think we want to get in the sector is technology for technology's sake. I think we've got to look at where things like IoT. I know there's a conversation about IoT later on, and all those various other bits in there. It's about how we can use those things best. And again, when I come on to some of those digital things later on, thinking about driving digital capabilities, which of course is key, actually creates a whole load more data. So, when I talk about digital 2.0, I'll go through IoT and chatbots and all those sorts of things. Actually, that in its own right creates another big pool of data as well. So again, it's how we kind of manage those things accordingly. So I think, Robert's question there is how, focus on things that matter. It's got to be absolutely aligning the capabilities of everything that MRI develop and everything that all the competition and all the partners in the sector develop, has to be open architecture. We've all got to work together, because that's the way that everybody succeeds then, isn't it?
It's a good point, actually, from Ryan Dempsey of TCW. In terms of the white paper, when have we? So he's putting a question to us here. When have we ever needed a document to prompt us to innovate? And I think that's a brilliant point in response to what matters.
I'm just reading that. When have we ever needed a document to prompt us to innovate? I think you're right there, Ryan. I don't think we ever have. I think though, I think Dave, you said at the start, is the sector sometimes slow to adopt things, and maybe something like this maybe speeds those things up. I think there's been some great innovation. If I go back to 2000, when I was an IT manager for a housing association, we thought it was brilliant that we had, connected photocopiers. That was like the big thing. Whereas now it's like, you don't print out things, you email everybody, or, whatever that kind of move has been. I think that innovation's been there. I think it's been evolutionary over that time.
Yeah.
I think the sector's gone through a great set of evolution in the last 20 years, and I think the next 20 years, I'd love to see what that's going to look like in the next 20 years. So I don't think we've ever needed that, Ryan. I agree. I don't think we ever have, but I think that some of these things potentially prompt other things to kind of do that. There's another question there that says what does putting tenants first really mean for MRI, and how does it inform your product and technology strategy? I think that's a great question. I don't know. It doesn't tell me who asked that question, so I'll answer it. What it means is that we think about the user interface and user experience across everything that we do. I'll answer your question as well, Simon, in a second. How do we do that? We look at the user interface, look at the user experience. We need to get things like user groups and user forums and feedback loops, 360 feedback loops, good, bad, or indifferent, to make sure that what we're doing is actually going to deliver what we ultimately want to deliver. I think if we don't take that feedback on board, I think that will fail. MRI are keen to invest heavily in terms of product managers and product owners and all those various types of roles, which is the thing that the constituent businesses they had before, but never. I mean, Castleton had 2 product owners because they both worked for me. I think they're investing in that heavily there to make sure that those things come about properly. Simon's question, last question everyone's too polite to ask. Such a big fan of software coming together in such a short amount of time. How are you bringing it together? Will anything be compromised? Simon, it's a great question. I think we are. So one interesting thing that we've done is, in fact, if we go back, I think where Castleton could have done better is it could have driven integration more quickly. I think it could have driven integration more efficiently. And I think what they did, and I say they now, not I or we, what they did was they tried to shoehorn integration into normal mainstream development. And I think doing that was the wrong decision, because what it meant is that people were trying to do the integration as part of their day job of writing other new software. I think that's probably a reasonable failure on their part to have done that. MRI now, though, have said, look, we need to integrate these things properly. We need to do, true integration. We need to use proper architecture. So they're actually building a separate development team. I think there's circa 27 developers going to work on this particular part on the integration now. So we're going to get a separate development team now, which is already in motion now. We've now got a separate roadmap now on integration only to bring all those solutions together. And again, we're raising awareness of that across the sector and across the account managers. So people can see what was in and what that journey is. That's something we never did before. It's something that Orchard never did before. So again, for us now, that's going to become a separate work stream. Will anything be compromised? I think every solution we have across the board, we've looked at. MRI are very, very clear that they will not de-support any solutions. Save for where technology doesn't allow that to happen. Will they look to emphasize and de-emphasize solutions? Yes, probably, because that's the right thing to do. There's a lot of repetition in there, but again, they have commitments and contracts and a duty of care across those. So I think time will tell what happens at that. I think first we've got to get the integration right on those right solutions, and then I think that what we do then with the products will come out in due course.
James, I'm not sure how much you want to dig into this, because it's kind of opened up a can of worms with loads of questions, as you expected. I'm happy if you want to answer a few. You can wait to the end for some of these. We've had quite a few. Are you happy for me to pose a few of the?
You have what you want, Dave. Yeah, we've obviously got another 45 minutes yet. Yeah. So
that's fine. So some people have come back to us. One of them from Rob Fletcher, in answering your question and what's important to them in the sector, etc. Aligning digital capabilities to business outcomes and benefits, I think, is an important point and a good answer. Could you give us your views on that one, James?
Which one is that? The MRIs?
That's Rob Fletcher in the chat. So some people have used the chat.
I was on the Q&A, so I've just missed Rob's. Is that the one that says MRI is its own stack of tech from the US?
No, it's okay. It's in the chat, and if you go further up, and the people who've used the chat, it's fine. Aligning. So Rob's saying in answer to the question about what's important to them, he's said aligning digital capabilities to business outcomes and benefits. So that's an answer to the question. So your views on that one, James?
Yeah, I mean that's the one that I said, Dave, around aligning digital capabilities to business outcomes and benefits. Yeah, that's the one I think I said at the beginning around, we've got to look at, what we do, everything we do going forward has got to be integrated. We've got to make sure, simple things like, the document management solution. We've got to make sure things like that can present documents out to tenants. We've got to make sure that, the expected functionality that we expect in our normal day-to-day lives is there. We've got to make sure that everything's integrated. We've got to make sure it's all then ties back then to that data provision across the sector. We've got to make sure that when we do these things that we build in the capabilities then to manage and handle that data as well. I think it's so important that we do that.
Yeah. One of the next answers or points that somebody's made is Chris McKenzie-Grieve, and Chris has said that what he would like to see is real-time information. This is something I'm quite keen on as well. Real-time information across all aspects of the business, enhancing decision-making and becoming super agile.
Yeah.
To me, James, that is so important because that's the way we're heading. It's real-time. It's not reports anymore. It's I want to see information I can model, I can play with, I can get information right on my laptop, on my screen, on my phone, out in the field or wherever from home these days.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, definitely, Dave, definitely. And I guess Chris, that's a great question. I think people are making decisions now based on data sets. Again, we'll come on to some slides in a moment. Around that, and I think for us, I think the more data we can have that we can present in a concise and clear manner, the better it's going to be because people make decisions based on data. The whole country's in lockdown now based on data. And again, there may or may not be some slides in a little moment that may or may not cover some government PowerPoints. But again, I think that super agile decision making is absolutely right, Chris. I think it's a great point raised there.
Okay. Another answer. Well, Rob's come back with another one. I'm going to come back to that in a second because I want you to cover that at a bigger area. Geraint from ADRA has said real-time and forward-looking, extrapolating to the future based on the current. That's kind of similar, isn't it, to the real-time information one? I think we're going to see a lot of that today. Is about business informatics, really, rather than just reporting. Simon. Oh, a compliment from Simon, which is good. Thank you, Simon. A big provider talking straight on the tough questions makes a refreshing change. Well done, James.
Yeah,
I think that's great to hear. I mean, the purpose of the UnCon, folks, is not to be overly salesy, overly competitive, but have a chat, have a laugh, talk to each other, understand what we're all trying to do to better the sector. There's competition in there, we know that, and it's great. We need competition in a thriving economy to make things work for a sector. So that's good. Thanks for that, Simon. Please answer the question about MRI product strategy if possible, Rob. All right, we get it. We're coming, Rob. Hold on a minute. So Rob, let's answer that question because I think it's a good one. It's the question to MRI that any big company gets, James, around when you've got a stack of tech from a range of companies that have been acquired, that you'll be getting this question all the time.
Yeah.
And I know some of the answers we've been speaking to you guys, but it would be good for Rob and others in this forum to hear what you can tell us about how does all of this work? What's the plan on this page for strategy as far as products? You mentioned products going forwards, and what does it mean for Oxford and Castleton legacy customers?
Yeah, I mean,
and then Rob said, should we go to market? That's a bit unfair right now.
No, you shouldn't do that. I mean, and again, I don't want to take the next 40 minutes talking about what MRI are going to do in the sector because, again, I'm happy to take questions. I'm going to stay all day around the sort of table and sort of that. It's a very high level. Every solution that they've got, they paid a lot of money for. They paid £83 million for Castleton, and that's obviously a serious amount of money. They've invested more in the sector than anybody else, I think, since the acquisition of IBS by Capita back in 2009, 8, 9, something like that. So, again, they've invested a lot of money in that, of course, with Housing Partners and Orchard on top of that. The question of the strategy there is, we've got to make everything talk together properly. We still want to sell all our solutions as point-based solutions as well as a combined solution. If we look at some of the things that we have, there isn't as much repetition or duplication in it as what you would expect it to be. Of course, we have from the Castleton business, they have the Maintain solution. From Orchard, they have AccuServe, for example. Well, actually, both of them are fantastically used, repairs and maintenance solutions across the sector. What we would say going forward is we will put forward the right product that fits that. Both those products are absolutely go forward solutions. Both of them are absolutely what we would expect it to be. What I would say though, areas that are less feature rich. So, for example, asset management in the housing solutions, are not as rich as something like Orchard Asset, formerly known as ProMaster, of course. That solution is absolutely a proper full-blown asset management system, widely used probably by a number of people on this conversation. And therefore, we would look to say, well, actually, let's say, going forward, can we offer a roadmap there to move people out to a better solution around that? If we look at some of the other parts that we have, there was some, the Castleton business had something around, various apps and things around in the past for customer apps. Well, there's a new version of that now, of course, the .digital app. But again, we've got to make sure that we make that right and integrated before we start to release those things out to the door. So I think what MRI's strategy is going to be, Rob, to answer that question directly is, integration is number one priority. What they call unification, so to make everything look and feel exactly the same. They are very, very keen to move everything into MRI's architecture. So they have this thing called App Gateway, which enables things like two-factor authentication across the board and a variety of other things. They're very, very keen that it all rolls into that as well. So anything they do going forward will all tie into those design constraints. There was a question that flashed on the screen, it's gone now, David, around what influence about the US have. So the US own the design of all of MRI software globally, the look and feel of it. There's a VP of look and feel and branding, basically. That particular lady's role is to make sure that they all do look exactly the same and feel and experience. So our strategy now is to make that all happen. In fact, I did a presentation earlier this week to our global exec team, including the global CEO, CSO, CTO, vice presidents, all these people. And again, they love the software, but they're like, we want it all to look exactly the same. So look, feel, branding, but actually not just making them look the same. It's around looking at the actual experience of those applications and going, actually, it's time for a drains up review of some of these things, because if you look at some of them, Richie's commenting, what's wrong with P2P? Look at some, they are of a particular vintage, whereby in the past we've just stuck buttons and buttons and buttons over every single screen, and I think we haven't just got to make all them buttons and windows and objects all look the same. We've got to really look at what some of those things do. And and I was saying to somebody the other day, we've got to really start to engage user groups, user communities, feedback forums, clients, customers, clients, consumers, everybody. We've got to engage them in this particular program.
Thanks, James. Hopefully that's answered Rob's and a few other questions around MRI and product strategy and the future in the US and so on. And I think it's important that we have these discussions, but I want to bring it a little bit back on track with data. There's a few other questions and in the Q&A as well. James, just give me the heads up if you think we're going too much into the questions and you won't finish your presentation. So we'll go for a few more minutes if that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine, Dave. That's fine.
Yeah. Because these are fantastic questions, and when we started off slow, there's a bit too much for me to handle now, to be honest. Ryan's come back and said, Ryan Dempsey from TCW, in the chat section, James has said there needs to be a massive push on people understanding the data. We operate independently, I assume talking about TCW, because of the specialist nature. Yeah. One shoe does not fit all. Yeah. Very, very good point, Ryan, about understanding the data, James.
Yeah, it is. You said the phrase, I wrote down, you said a respect for data. That's what you said in your own conversation. Yeah. And I agree, Ryan. I think there needs to be an understanding. And again, when come to some of the slides in a moment, I'll kind of flag up some of those points there. And you said one shoe does not fit all. I actually use one T-shirt doesn't fit all. in my slides. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to understand what the value is. And again, when we come to some of the slides in a moment, I think you'll see some of those points in there.
Okay. Yeah, I think respect and value is important words to use when it comes to data. James, Rich has commented. I'll just say the comment. I need to feedback on this one. I don't see what's wrong with P2P.
Have you ever seen the P2P system? It could do with a slight makeover. It's not. It's functional. It's not the prettiest looking thing. Yeah. It's like me, very functional, not the prettiest looking thing. So
yeah, and sorry, James.
I think we should probably move on to the slides. And again, I will hand
tons of questions.
Yeah, and again,
what we'll try and do is, James, just to say, I'll cover some of these again. I'm storing them and saving them, and we'll ask them at the end if we've got time. If not, people can bring these up with you during the day. We can have further sessions and so
no, definitely.
A further discussion. Cheers, James. I'll leave it back to you for now. I'll disappear off the screen and get my ugly face off and keep it to yourself. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate. I just noticed there that Rich and Dave, sorry, that's not the truth. Rich and Chris Meisner talk IoT, and again, we'll come on to some of those things later. I think there's a presentation on IoT in a bit as well. So I think it's absolutely a thing going forwards. So, I've already said how we plan to do this. Yeah, we plan to, engage people. We plan to engage in user groups, user communities, and all those various things. Again, I'd certainly welcome everybody's feedback as to how we can do that. I've been engaging with the chair of the Orchard user group recently, but again, I think we need to probably do something more. Can we do something more wide ranging? Again, let's sort of consider those things. So let's get on to something about data. It's all about data, stupid, which is of course is the phrase of the conversation. For us and for me, I think it's interesting. Again, going back to the question a little point ago from Ryan around what we have. If you think about our sector and think about yourselves as providers or ourselves as technology partners, we're very, very unique in what we have. We know everything. We know that 360-degree view of everything in your assets. In the main, we do anyway. We know about the property. We know that you see it every year to go and do a gas service. We know what repairs it's had done on there. We know the condition of it. We know all those various points and pieces, etc., about that location. We know how it operates financially. We know how much it costs. We know how much the residual value is. We know how much you paid for it originally. We know all these things about this location. And critically, we know who lives in there. We know the people. We know generally the full household composition. We know everything about that particular set of people in that property, the family composition. We sometimes know how much they earn. We know if they're on benefits. We know their health conditions if necessary. We know vast amounts. And thinking about, understanding the data that Ryan raised earlier on, I think if you look at any other sector, what other sector knows all that information? If I look at our house, we have a HSBC mortgage in our house. HSBC haven't got a clue about this house. They have no idea if it's got windows, doors, who lives here. They don't know anything at all about it. So, think about the leverage that we have there in terms of that data set across the sector, and think about how we can use that data and how that can really, really drive forward changes. And again, Luke to obviously embrace it. I think Dave said the phrase again, respect for data. And again, think about what we can do with that. And again, we'll come on some of those in a moment. So, someone, I think Ryan said one shoe doesn't fit all. I've got one T-shirt doesn't fit all. Certainly my T-shirts would bury most people. Lockdown's not been good for my diet. Thinking around data management, does one size fit all, across every aspect of what we do? And let's think about that there for a moment. And Dave, again, if you want to come back in again, please feel free to challenge me on this. But think about unification of data from all these various solutions. And of course, Simon raised question about what are we going to do with all these products. Again, it's important that we have, if somebody has all of our solutions, we've got to have a good way to bring all that data together. And the more data we add, the more systems that we build, the more things that we create, the more things that we integrate, the more things we've got to be able to bring together from those disparate systems. Looking at poor data quality, and again, some people know this. I was a techie in my past life. I did huge amounts of data conversions from massive ex-local authority systems into various other systems going forwards. Data quality is an absolutely key thing. And again, I think, if we look back to the whole purpose of this conference is all around data. There's no point having all this data if the quality is poor. So, and again, this is not meant as a sales pitch, but there are tools out there, of course, on the market that can obviously help do that. And again, software should enable you to make sure that you can collect data at the right time, to do those things properly. Analyze that data to understand the base. And Dave, you probably comment here in a second, but looking at that customer service and customer delivery, my one size doesn't fit all is primarily aimed at customer experience, customer services. Are we asking people how they want to interact with you as an organization? And for years I've rambled on about about a tailored experience and customized experience, etc. But actually, now we have all this data, then can we do something about that? So, David, see, you've just put a little comment in there. Do you want to just raise a little point there around that?
Yeah, well, no, obviously some folk will hear what I'm saying, but also some folk will read it. On that area of data quality, there's no point in having all the best systems, analytical tools and processes if the data's rubbish. Too many times we talk about things like data cleansing and all of these things, but it's pure and simple governance strategy around looking after your data. And it's rubbish in, rubbish out, crap in, crap out. If you've got rubbish, crap data, you're going to have the results rubbish and crap. Yeah. I mean, Christ, Donald Trump's been doing it for years, but he's finally been caught up with them. So, again, integrity and honesty of data is another thing. But
And I think as Mark Duffield's just raised there, should applications be more to prevent crap in? I think absolutely, Mark, they should. And I think as a provider, and again, all our other friends and colleagues on the call as well, across the sector, I think we should absolutely do more to prevent bad data entry. There should be more validation. There should be more of those things built into that. And again, ease of identification around where things go. And again, if you look at some of the housing partner solutions around that TAME solution, again, some of those are the ones where some great benefits can be seen. Identifying value adds, to tenants, to residents, to potential customers, etc. Think about some of those value add things we can do if we add all this data across the sector that we all bring together. And then, of course, it goes on without saying, with all of those things tied together, then can we look then to drive, what is already a fantastic service? Can we look then to drive a more enhanced service, enhanced experiences, and look at that one size does not fit all, t-shirting exercise, one size does not fit all, can we do far more there with the data on that service delivery? Okay. So some examples. So I thought I'd go a little bit rogue here and go a little bit outside of the social housing sector for some examples of good and bad examples of data and how some of these things can make a difference. So we've and again, it's interesting bringing in the American part to the business. I'm talking to our chief product officer, a new guy to MRI, a guy called Sharab, the other day. And we were talking about his whole background is around data and analytics. He worked for IBM and Google and all sorts of very, very, very interesting data people. And I asked him some of the things that he's sort of seen, across his career, sort of 15, 20 years in terms of analytics. And again, I said, look, have you got some examples that I could put forward? And obviously American based, because of course they are American. Some examples I can put forward there in terms of things where data has transformed traditional industries. And again, some big names in there. He went through some of the stories on these. I won't bother reading this now, but thinking about improving supply chain with Coca-Cola and Red Bull, and he kind of unpacked that conversation for me quite a bit there about how they looked at demand and supply and resources and trucks and factories and where they place their factories and all these various things. And if we go back 30 years ago, Toyota did just-in-time production, which again, of course, is something similar to that on there. But for us, actually, how can we look there to transform traditional industries? Look at retailers, how they do customer services and product marketing mix. If you've ever been into a Walmart in America, they're a phenomenal place to go to because everything that you seem to want is just there. Somehow the shop seems to almost, take money out of your pocket straight away. And again, they're very, very, very good at that. And again, Walmart have been on a reinvention process with that, but again, using the data and analytics that they have. And of course, there's huge amounts of data and EPOS systems and customer tracking and RFID tags in supermarkets and all those various things. Of course, some of those things, of course, are irrelevant to us. But again, I think it's important, and again, this conference is different to most, it's important to kind of consider some of these things outside of sector. And then another example, again, this was just absolutely phenomenal in my mind here. The Netflix, of course, which have changed, I think Blockbuster once said, this Netflix thing will never take off, and then Blockbuster disappeared. This whole program, and I've never watched House of Cards, but I am going to watch it. This whole program was created based on feedback and behavior. I mean, how amazing is that a whole TV series should be created based on what people want to see, and again, it says at the bottom there, the poster was generated in machine learning, to give people what people were asking for and feeding back on. I mean, what a phenomenal thing to do. And of course, Netflix have got all the money in the world to be able to do this. But I just thought what a very, very, very interesting thing to raise there around how they've created something there just by using analytics and behavior and feedback, from their customer base. If we then get into some bad ones of those, I just thought that slide there was just hilarious. Next slide, please. If anybody, I assume a lot of people watched, of course, the presentation from the government when they were talking around the new lockdown, of course, that we're now in England. And Sir Chris there, of course, just kept saying, next slide, please. I thought it was quite comical that he did that, due to then the comicalness of these slides. And again, these are the most intelligent people in the country, if not in the world. And the best that they could do was a PowerPoint slide that had got fonts that nobody could see. They'd squash them down and just put in there as images as opposed to actual embedded PowerPoints. They put so much data onto one slide that just didn't make any sense. As Rich says there quite rightfully, if we just go back on there, they didn't have a clicker. Next slide, please. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that these people, the Prime Minister and the top chief medical people there didn't have, Scabby says the frigging basics, a single clicker. They could have done that far, far better. The annoying thing is, and this is the kind of key takeaway, is they have the data. They understand the data because, of course, they're exceptionally intelligent people, but they just present it in a very, very, very poor way. What we need to think of there is the outputs should be right for the audience. And again, if you've probably got some statisticians on the statisticians, I think that's the right word. I'm sure they can understand that. But, your normal person, would really, really, really struggle to understand those things. And Dave Loud said that Boris should not be trusted with a laser pointer. So, think again about that. They're great sets of data, vast amounts of data, more than this country's probably had for many, many years on something. But, they hadn't got a clicker, and they had, and the data was just so poorly represented. And again, how can we look to improve some of those things? Again, another one there, Tesco's, early 2010s, they were basically, obviously went through a very difficult time. They sort of missed, they were the blue chip company, they were the blueprint for how businesses should succeed, but they missed so much. If you look at Tesco Club Cards, they just absolutely not worked out where the direction of travel was going to be for people. They hadn't sort of seen that trend and shift to online shopping. They hadn't seen that move to people wanting to drive out, to not drive to these places and go out and get these things. People wanting things far, far easier. And again, think about how that happened to Tesco. They have massive profit losses and all those various things, and people, the revolution to Asda, Aldi and Lidl happened almost overnight, and Tesco's were left behind, and again, there's some interesting points. I'll just see the chat there. John White, I'll look at that, John, later on, actually. But think about some of those there where Tesco, someone as huge as Tesco's, and there's vast amounts of data they must have across their sector and their platform. They just did not get it right. And again, a very, very poor use of analytics. I don't think any unconventional conference would be right without a little bit of Dilbert. I think people like Dilbert. It's amazing me that they continue to produce these things. So, there's a couple of small ones here. The first one says, I didn't have anything useful to say, so I made a pie chart. People then go, oh, it must be true because it's a pie chart. Yeah, that worked too well. I pledged my life and my fortune to the pie chart. I mean, if you're going to do a chart, at least make sure that it kind of makes sense. Stuart says that Dilbert's always relevant, absolutely. And again, the boss at the bottom there with Dilbert in there, are you sure the data you gave me is correct? He then says, I've been giving you incorrect data for years. This is the first time you've asked. And then he of course says, what? He says, I said the data is totally accurate. Now, I mean, how many times have we actually gone back to fact check reports that come out of systems? I think it's so important to kind of review some of those things, review some of those things accordingly. Right, I've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to take 10, Dave, but I'll do my best. In fact, I haven't, Dave. I've got 20 minutes because we started at 1:15, and I've got an hour. Unless it's 5 minutes to questions. So Goldilocks and the three data bears. How much data do you have? Too hot, too much to handle, just manageable, or not enough to analyze. And again, I think as Ryan's commented there, says, think about data that can understand things and how we can use that, understand that accordingly. Think about how much data you've got. And, I think everyone should try to aim, for the kind of, it's just right, it's just about manageable. If you haven't got enough, how do we go around collecting that? Think about how we can potentially look to facilitate some of that additional data. So again, think about the Goldilocks and the three bowls of data. What is the impact of poor quality on customer data? I think Dave will come into questions after this slide, if that's all right. Think about the poor quality, customer data. Digital transformation, and everybody has probably gone down the portal route now, but actually, does poor data make that a bigger, complicated thing than what it is? I did a project some years ago, and this particular organisation, a great organisation, worked exceptionally well with them. They'd found that a lot of their dates of birth were 1900. That's not a thing. Well, it probably is a thing, but those people are, probably in the minority. Again, thinking around, if we're going to do self-service, if we're going to do all the things that are going to be on the slides in a moment, how does that happen there if your data sets are incorrect? Mr. Harvey's put in there the 4 letters GDPR. I think you're right, Rich. I think it does come along like a sickness bug, as you so elegantly put it there. I think, though, the reality is, I think your data's got to be right for GDPR or not. In reality, there of course there's a high risk of non-compliance in terms of having incorrect data and data going out to the wrong people. So I think if we were looking at how to help GDPR, maybe more good data is better than more bad data. And again, I'll go to one of the questions before around, how does the top software facilitate that? Again, I think it's absolutely important that the software helps to drive that. I think if there's bad data, bad analysis, going back to Dilbert there, I've been delivering you bad data for years or incorrect data for years. Again, how do we ever fact check what we're actually saying? And again, is that something we need to be very, very conscious of? I've seen over the years so many people where addresses aren't correct, or so the addresses aren't in BS 7666 format, or the postcode's in like address line 2, or it just says house name and then house name and then postcode, and again things are incorrect. How much time do we waste and spend in terms of reformatted letters? Again, how can that be done properly? Misspelling, again, I've seen loads of examples where someone sends a letter that says at the end of the tenant's name bracket deceased. So they've not, that the system has allowed them to put in their bracket deceased. They've not gone in there to actually update that record properly. Thinking around some of those there can be quite distressing. Text messages and emails, again, of course, one of the Heritage Castleton Solutions comms manager, which was Deep Lake, sends out millions and millions and millions of text messages a year. Making sure that those phone numbers are correct and right, etc., is so key again to driving some of those services forward. If you need to get hold of somebody, how do you know that you've got the right details? And think about this as well, more than just the tenants. When Castleton closed its offices in March, we went on a program to text all our staff to tell them that the offices had closed. It was interesting that we didn't have every single member of our staff's mobile phone numbers, because some people have work phones, some people don't. Those that don't didn't give them to us. So we had no way to bulk contact everybody. So in emergency, obviously, as it was, we made sure that we had done that. We had done that accordingly. And the last 2 points, Dave, just before you ask any questions, is flagging up illegal subletting. Of course, there's great technology out there, of course, some of which we have and we have in our stable. Flagging up illegal subletting, of course, is something very, very, very important. As demand is now higher than ever, for our properties, and should we need something around that. And then latterly ties in, I suppose, into the very first point then around digital transformation. If your dates of birth are wrong, is there a poor uptake in terms of self-registration, and again, and how can those sorts of things all help us with those technologies? So go on then, Mr. Loudon. I can grab a quick glass of water while you're talking.
Yeah, well done, James. That was great, and thanks for the first presentation. So the way, we asked a lot of questions and there was a lot of answers and a lot of chat, and that was fantastic. That's exactly what the UnCon's about. James, brilliant. Thank you very much. So we've got some questions, and the way the Q&A works is that people can go in and vote the questions up. So from the top, James, more of a discussion point, and I'll chip in if you want. With a large number of housing sector companies going dynamics, what are MRI's plans for full, open, accessible integration?
No, definitely. So again, it's a great question. I think, of course, Dynamics and Salesforce as well has, of course, been mooted around recently, and all those various solutions. I think for me, there, our view is that we are looking to enable APIs across everything. I'm still not. Maybe I'm a Luddite. I'm not convinced that Dynamics can absolutely replace a full housing management system in a cost-effective manner. And maybe I'm wrong about that. And again, I'm more than happy to be corrected on that. But for me, what I think we need to do is make sure that actually, if someone wants to use Dynamics as a CRM and case management front end, that actually the back end of that, which of course we would favour the rent side, the people, the property, etc., that we will make sure that that's all architected properly, to enable those things to happen. We certainly do not want to be seen as being restrictive. And again, I've been talking to some of the Orchard technical people recently around their web service architecture. I think we will just continue to enhance that and build that as we go forward, because we want to do that for our integration. I think, Dave, we're in a scenario whereby CRMs, Dynamics, Salesforces, etc., will probably become cost effective, and we want to make sure that we're not seen as restrictors for those things. Of course, what I would and should say, of course, is that you should take our CRM system, because of course that's better. But you'd expect me to say that. So now I think the architecture's got to be right to facilitate these things.
Okay. Thanks, James. The next one, Rich Harvey asked, that says 5 votes. It's a popular one. What are MRI's thoughts on involving housing association customers directly to feed into developments rather than driven from HAs?
I don't think Rich. So do you mean tenants then? I assume. So
I think he's talking about tenants there.
I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting. I did it. The project I referred to earlier on, actually, where they had a number of dates of birth as 0101 1900. An interesting project. What happened was they took the Castleton customer app, which again, of course, is still a widely used solution. And myself and the project team and my professional services team at the time had been through a great experience of building it all. We'd signed it all off internally. Everyone was all great. It was all fantastic. And I said at a project board one, said, look, we should really get the ultimate consumer involved in this. So we actually had an evening meeting with these tenants. We brought them into the association's offices. We got them sandwiches and we got them, drinks and all this type of stuff. And we ran it by them. And I'll be frank with you, because it's important. They actually hated it. The tenants actually genuinely hated the solution. They didn't like it. They thought the iconography was poor. They thought the colouring was poor. They just didn't like it. Which was a bit of a blow, really, to be absolutely frank. It was a blow because we thought as a project team we'd done a great job. The interesting point was we looked at it all from a corporate perspective. And we probably hadn't thought about those things. So what we actually did, we took all their feedback on board. We took it back, we changed it all, we played it back to him again, and the uptake was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, Rich, I think absolutely it's something we would absolutely value. If we look at your Alexa project, and apologies for saying that word if anybody's device has now woken up. If we look at your project with Alexa, of course, that involved your consumers as well. So,
thanks, James. There's another couple of 5s up there. There's always going to be, I think, more questions than we have time for. But I will try and keep it fair. I'm going to move away just for a second, and I'm not avoiding things. We will come to them about Castleton.
You're avoiding the question, Dave, aren't you?
Well, I want to try and get into some of the other things about data as well. So I don't want to feel that everyone's ganging up on you, James. I know you can handle it.
I'll happily answer that. I'll happily answer that question.
Let's go for a couple of these quickly. I feel like the presidential debate person that's always cutting you off, and I can mute you if you talk too long. How does MRI avoid becoming the next Castleton in the sector? course, MRI bought Castleton. Question alludes to the terrible. Okay, sorry, that's me. That's the first F word in the conference. Question alludes to the terrible reputation of Castleton in the sector, I'm afraid. Well, that's quite nice. Straight at you, James.
It is, and again, it's a good question. Again, it's right to acknowledge the fact that Castleton did make mistakes. There's no argument about that. Sorry to say we were perfect. We weren't. We made mistakes. I think the Castleton business was brought together very, very quickly. I think we prioritised some of the incorrect things as an organisation. I think we probably, we didn't sort of baseline where we should get to. I think we have to look at service delivery. We've moved professional services and project management away from me. That probably makes things better. We moved that away there from me now into MRI's stance, with their kind of proper escalation programs, etc. Again, I think we always endeavour to do our best at Castleton, but we did not always come clean. We did not always do the best that we could do. I think in reality, I think there's a number of internal competing factors which I obviously won't go into. I think MRI they've got clear demarcation of responsibilities. They make sure that one person has one set of responsibilities. It will be a different experience with these people. They're very, very keen on success factors. They're very, very keen in terms of referenceability. They're very, very keen to make sure that we don't make some of the mistakes of the past that Castleton did. And again, I would single out Castleton. And again, it's hard for me to say this because I was the COO of the business for sort of 4 years. And of course, I made mistakes. My team made mistakes. Ultimately, they were probably my decisions that were probably the wrong decisions. We've just got to learn from those and try and move on. And I guess, as well, Dave, just to finish that off, I think as well as taking on board product feedback, we need to take on board service feedback as well. And again, I don't mean down to minutiae of individual support tickets because we'll get on a rabbit warren with that. I think it's down to feedback around service delivery and what that can look like and what that improvement can drive forward.
Thanks, James. And listen, I really appreciate the candour, and I'm sure everyone else listening and the person that has asked the question will as well. It's just nice to see that we can do this in this type of forum and be honest and look to the future. Another one as a NED, that's a non-executive director to some folk. I am always looking for the golden thread of data from grassroots to a business dashboard that auto-completes. Oof, I love that. The less management tinkering, the better. Clean, relevant and true. Just, I'm going to ask you to keep the answers short, James. I feel like the moderator.
I think for me, you're trying to convince me, Dave, that I think I need to talk less. I think they're there though.
Yeah.
Again, why it's important, which was actually my next slide, because Dave's actually cut me off 4 slides early. I think what's important though is why is good data management essential? And again, I think it is around compliance reporting. It is all around those things there. It is around to make the systems drive that forward to yourself. Though, Chris, as a non-exec director, of course, you want to get a dashboard, you want to get a nice report, you want to get all those things out there. You want to be confident that there's transparency, that the data's in the right format, and all those types of things. So for me, I think it's important that we make sure that the dashboards, as you put there, are right. Do flag up compliance issues. Again, we talk. In fact, well, this one is digital. I'll skip these slides there just in the context of time. I did have a slide there on the social housing white paper, and again, the 4 things that I drew out. I know you said, Dave, there's no mention of technology. The 4 things I drew out there are good, robust asset management. It flags up about smoke alarms and CO2 alarms, of course, with Grenfell. Good business intelligence, being transparent and compliant, with the technology. I think a good case management system there to raise complaints, compliments, and all those things. And critically, then I think a tenant satisfaction and a feedback system there to make sure that you said at the beginning, Dave, about being the best and the safest that we can be. And for me, it's around making sure that we have that platform there to be able to do that. So I think, Chris, hopefully the technology can drive that, as we go forward.
Thanks. And again, thanks for the honesty there. We've got 5 minutes left, so this is looking good. How do MRI see the future use of, you kind of partly mentioned it there, of IoT devices. I know Castleton started to look at Agile 365 IoT, but it kind of died off.
Yeah, we did.
Face-to-face visits, yeah. I mean, that's a big thing.
I'm just going to go to this slide here, Dave. I think IoT, I think at the time, we did look at IoT, in the older days, and I say older days, we're talking about 3 or 4 years ago. I think technology now has moved on vastly different now. I think at the time we looked at it, we thought this is a thing, but actually, is it really a thing? Are people actually going to start using this? I think for me, I think IoT absolutely becomes part of the digital transformation 2.0. It ties in with all the other things I've got inside there. I guess the question there is, how do we make sure that in the bringing in of all these things, which I do think is the right thing to do, how do we handle and manage all that additional data set? There's so much more data created by these things. How do we do that? And there's a question, and again, we'll probably need to wrap up in a second. There's a question around BIM, building information modeling, and how do we bring those data standards in? Engage with people, across the sector. Of course, Hacked, James Bagger, of course, from Hacked, of course, was looking at various data standards, interchange across the sector. Again, we'd love to get involved in that. As the supplier, you've got 850 providers across the UK and Republic of Ireland. We'd love to be, heavily involved in that, in that standardisation. So yeah, absolutely, it's a way we would certainly go.
Yeah, I like what Hacked are doing. Will we see great examples from outside the sector penetrate social housing? I think that was asked when you were talking about Walmart, etc.
Yeah, the Coca-Cola and Walmart, all those types of things. Yeah. I'd love to think so. I would love to think that the kind of one-size-fits-all service delivery does change. I would love to think that actually data can make a big difference to that. And I would love to think that actually in 2-3 years' time, we sit and go, actually, do you know what? The Gen Zs that have come into the sector now, are actually being able now to truly drive these things forward. And I'd love to see far more IoT rolled out there. And I would love to see the bottom phrase on my slide today, which is moving more services to the sofa. It's a phrase that now for about the last sort of six months or so now around kind of moving some of those service delivery methodologies now to people in their armchair at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And again, if you look at what Richard Harvey's done with the Alexa solutions at housing, the Alexa product at Housing Solutions, for me, I think that is groundbreaking. I know those guys are up for nominated for an award on that, and again, I think that's the absolutely right thing to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to do. We're trying to get this out here, and this is what these events are about. It's what the type of things in Digital Bark we're trying to do is get these messages out and show people that it does happen. IOPT and Dane's about today and tomorrow, I think, and we've also got many great examples in those areas. We can manage data, if we've got 2 minutes, we can manage data much better if SaaS products are used, allowing us to integrate SaaS BI. MRI is advertising switching to MRI SaaS, moving to MRI Cloud. Is this really SaaS? I suppose it's you to answer that one. I've got my thoughts on that.
Of course it's going to be. You're asking me a question. I think software as a service, if the definition of software as a service is Salesforce, which I think is probably the kind of primary definition of SaaS, then I think, Gary, it probably isn't. I think we will ultimately get to that. I think software as a service in the branding now would be more of a hosted solution whereby the whole thing is managed in a cloud. So literally you have no overhead in terms of that. As I said to you at the beginning, MRI's vision is to move everything into their proper application gateway, what they call PMX platform 10 as it's actually called. They want to move everything into that, which is true SaaS and is true multi-tenanted and all the things that go along with that. That's a journey that we will be going on. And again, we'd love to take customers and clients, of course, along with us on that particular journey. Moving to our cloud though is probably not true SaaS in the truest phrase of being a Salesforce S delivery.
Okay, thanks, James. So many of the Castleton solutions are not just legacy, but legacy and legacy. Surely it is time to throw them away and build new from the ground up. I think you've kind of partly answered that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have. And if I haven't, I'm happy to chat to John because I'm conscious of that. And I don't want to take anyone else's time.
Yeah. Thanks, John. But let's catch up on that one. I think we covered part of it. Mark Duffel is probably going to get into the last question here. Assuming real-time data access is feasible, and I'm not sure what that looks like, does that make the data warehouse redundant?
I think, and we'll finish this on there, Mark. I think it's a great question. I think there's always going to be a world for those things, for data mart and data warehouse, because there's so much static data. And I think to make systems operate efficiently, I think you've got to have a blended approach in terms of real-time data extraction. The phrase on the Q&A earlier on was around super agile, and I really like that phrase.
Yeah.
For me, I think we need to put with a blended approach in terms of, what's less frequently changed data versus what's more frequently changed data, and that I think is where we get the true power out of the data. And again, look at the summary slide I put there. You guys hold a vast amount of data. You want to be able to use it in a great way. This is a continuation, in terms of digital transformation. That's what it should be seen as. And again, data is not just done. It's not a tick in a box. It's an ongoing process, and it should absolutely be, there should be a user phrase before, around liberation of data. We should liberate the data there to make a big difference in terms of what we do.
Thanks, James. There is one more question. It'd be a shame. James, let's just answer it quickly, because then it's a clean sheet. Where will a customer of Orchard on-premise be in 2 years' time? Still on-prem or a fully delivered SaaS solution? That's quite a pointed question.
It is. It's probably a question I'm probably going to struggle to answer, which would be the first one I'll probably struggle to answer. But I think for me, MRI, with the acquisition of Castleton, bought, of course, Castleton Managed Services, which of course, a number of people on this call use. I think for me, if we can look to host any solutions, then we would do that. Will it be a full Salesforce SaaS solution in the next 2 years? I suggest not. But I would like to think that we can make it hostable, deployable through a web browser, all those various things, of course, that Orchard are already on the journey for to make that possible.
Yeah, I assume you'll be working hard on strategies and what you're doing in all these products. Some of it will be crystal ball stuff. Some of it will be ideas you can't share.
Yeah.
Thanks for that one. So that's all the questions and answers done. Still some chat coming in. Folks, it's time to say thanks to James. James, that was, I think you imagine that was quite difficult, because there were some questions in there that were quite tough. But that's what we're here for, is to be open and honest. And I think folk are praising you for that, mate.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, man. Like I said, I'm going to pop into I don't know how to get into the room. I don't know how to go to this room. But
don't worry, I'll stop presenting in a second. Everyone, grab a coffee, have a comfort break. Don't take too long, because this is the opportunity for you to ask James more questions, for James to talk about other things and other folk in the room. So moving on. After that, we've got a great presentation from Human Plus. So we will talk about that in half an hour. Everyone, take care. Bye for now.
Thanks, Dave.